So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our virtual celebration of the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Bonjour à tous, bienvenue à la célébration virtuelle de la
Welcome
journée.
to our virtual celebration of the UN International Day of Persons with Disabilities.
My name is Lucille Berlinguet-Saumur, and I am the Program Manager of Accessibility here at the city. Je m'appelle Lucille Berlinguet et je suis la gestionnaire de programme de l'accessibilité ici à la ville d'Ottawa. For those of you who cannot see me, I am a short lady in my 50s. I have my hair up in a bun and I'm wearing a black shirt. It is an absolute pleasure to be here celebrating with you today. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping pieces that I'd like to address. While most of us are experts now in Zoom, here are a few reminders on how to access the additional accessibility supports to be able to enjoy and participate in this event. The event will be simultaneously translated into French. Pour suivre en français, vous pouvez choisir
To follow in French, you can follow the interpretation button and choose French. You will hear the audio translation and you'll have to cut the sound in English.
By selecting the captioning button in the controls in Zoom. Le sous-titrage en français est disponible par le biais du
Closed
lien.
caption is available through the chat
For
box.
those who require American Sign Language, you can pin the interpreter by clicking on the three dots in the upper right corner of the interpreter's video and selecting the pin icon. Et pour ceux qui ont besoin de la langue des signes québécoise,
And for those of you who need the Quebec Sign Language, you can go in the interpreter's video and click on the three dots in the upper right corner of the video, of the interpreter's video, and choose the proper icon.
But before we begin, I'd like to recognize that the City of Ottawa and across the country, our work takes place on traditional Indigenous territories. Avant de commencer, j'aimerais reconnaître qu'Ottawa et dans tout le pays.
So in Ottawa, we're working on the traditional Aboriginal territory.
We extend our respect to all the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable contributions, both past and present, to this land. Research shows that Indigenous persons with disabilities often experience discrimination and face additional barriers compared to the general population because of this intersectionality. In our work to increase accessibility for all, may we be mindful of our Indigenous peoples and work towards reconciliation and inclusivity to include the voices of Indigenous persons with disabilities. I'd first like to thank a few dignitaries and welcome them to the meeting. We will be hearing from each of them today. His Worship, Mayor Sutcliffe, good morning. Philip Riskala, Chief Executive Officer for Accessibility Standards Canada. Rich Donovan, Subject Matter Expert and Fourth Reviewer of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Philip Turcott, the Chair of our city's Accessibility Advisory Committee. And Jerry Fiore, former Chair of the Ottawa Disability Coalition. I would also like to thank the numerous members of council and members of the city's senior leadership team who have joined us today. Councillor Carr, Councillor Devine, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kavanaugh, Councillor King, Councillor Kitts, Councillor Lowe, Councillor Menard, Councillor Tierney, and Councillor Troster. And from our leadership team, Dan Chenier, the General Manager of Recreation, Culture and Facility Services, Karina Duclos, Director of Infrastructure Services, and Valerie Turner, General Manager of Innovative client services. To officially begin our event, I'd like to invite Mayor Mark Sutcliffe to say a few words and to present the proclamation. J'aimerais inviter le maire Sutcliffe.
I'd like to invite Mayor Sutcliffe to say a few words.
Merci, Lucille. Thank you, Lucille. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. I'm speaking to you today from my office at City Hall in downtown Ottawa. And for those of you who aren't able to see me, I'm a middle-aged white man with salt and pepper hair. That's actually what I was told to say by a member of my team. I didn't, I have a little bit of gray hair, and I expect to have more gray hair in about 4 years from now when my term as mayor comes to an end. And I'm wearing a dark gray suit. I want to welcome you on behalf of my colleagues on Ottawa City Council. As you heard, many of them are joining us for this presentation today. And also Wendy Stephenson, who is in her second day as the acting city manager. I want to welcome Wendy and welcome everyone. And thank you for being with us here today to celebrate the annual International Day of Persons with Disabilities proclaimed by the United Nations in 1992. Permettez-moi de vous souhaiter la plus cordiale bienvenue et
Please let me welcome you all and thank you for being with us here today to celebrate the annual International Day of Persons with Disabilities proclaimed by the United Nations in 1992.
Along with my council colleagues and the senior management team, I want to thank everyone for attending this important event and for ensuring that accessibility remains a priority in this upcoming term of council. This day is celebrated by people, municipalities, organizations, agencies, and others who help to identify and eliminate the discrimination, marginalization, exclusion, and barriers that people with disabilities face. The UN theme for this year is Transformative Solutions for Inclusive Development, the role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world. As a city, this theme encourages us to be creative in how we plan and do business to ensure that people with disabilities are included at every stage. Today, as we celebrate the contributions and hard work of people with disabilities and disability organizations, we acknowledge that there is still much more work to be done. Shortly, we will hear about some of the accessibility initiatives that the city has been working on over the past year. These projects and services are the result of regular community engagement and feedback to ensure the experiences and perspectives of people with disabilities are considered in all of our daily work. This is consistent with the federal government's Nothing Without Us strategy under the Accessible Canada Act. To ensure that community engagement and feedback lead to real change, we continue to rely on our Accessibility Advisory Committee. This committee includes 11 community members who have lived experience and/or expertise with disability, and some of them are with us today, and I thank you for joining us. The committee consists of Philip B. Turcott, the committee chair, Brian Wade, the committee vice chair, Wayne Antle, Anna Maria Cruz Valderrama, Holly Ellingwood, Adele Furry, Murray Gallant, Vanya Karam, Tammy Kelly, John Patterson, and reserve member Joël Dazé. You're going to be hearing from the committee chair, Philip Turcott, later in the event, but I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the volunteers who have worked tirelessly and who have dedicated their time, their knowledge, their skills, their expertise, their commitment to increasing accessibility at the City of Ottawa. The committee meets at least 6 times per year, and there are additional special meetings sometimes as required. The group consults on projects required under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and many more, where the city benefits from an accessibility lens. In addition to their meetings, the group provides feedback by email, and many members participate in working groups or other subcommittees. City staff also continue to engage and collaborate regularly with other groups of community stakeholders of persons with disabilities, and this includes those in the Ottawa Disability Coalition. This dedicated group provides countless hours of expertise and invaluable feedback to our staff to ensure the accessibility of city policies, projects, services, and facilities. I'm very pleased to welcome some members of the coalition today, and past chair, Jerry Fiore, who will also be speaking during this event. So today, please join me in congratulating and acknowledging everyone, all of you who work so tirelessly to make the City of Ottawa more accessible and inclusive to our residents. A very big thank you to all of you. Permettez-moi aujourd'hui de féliciter.
So please join me in congratulating and acknowledging everyone who works tirelessly to make the City of Ottawa more accessible and inclusive for our residents. A big thank you to all of you.
Now, as the Mayor of Ottawa, it is my honor to present the proclamation of International Day of Persons with Disabilities in Ottawa to Jerry Fiore from the Ottawa Disability Coalition. I'm going to read the proclamation now. Whereas December 3rd marks the annual United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and whereas this day is celebrated worldwide by those who have a vital role to play in the identification and elimination of discrimination, marginalization, exclusion, and barriers that people with disabilities face. And whereas in 2010, Canada ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which protects the rights to equality and non-discrimination of persons with disabilities. And whereas the City of Ottawa's accessibility policy, which outlines our commitment to the AODA, establishes equity to people with disabilities in the use and benefit of city services, programs, goods, and facilities. Therefore, I, Mark Sutcliffe, Mayor of the City of Ottawa, do hereby proclaim December 3rd, 2022, International Day of Persons with Disabilities in Ottawa. And I'll hold up for you the actual proclamation, which we've had framed for you and will be presented to you. Thank you all for the collaborative work the Ottawa Disability Coalition does to assist in making the city more accessible, as we strive to ensure full accessibility in Ontario and across the country in the coming years. Our city will continue to look for innovative ways to support persons with disabilities in our communities. Thank you once again. Merci beaucoup. And here again is the official proclamation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sutcliffe. It's a pleasure to work collaboratively with the city and the council and the mayor. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sutcliffe. I look forward to working with you over the next term to continue advancing accessibility and removing barriers for our city's residents. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Wendy Stephenson, our acting city manager, who will provide an update and some highlights of the accessibility work conducted at the city over the past year. Wendy, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. And I too will describe myself, and I will not give my age, but I will say I am a middle-aged woman with brown hair, and I'm wearing a black suit today. Thank you so much for the introduction, Lucille. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. I'm very happy to be here today representing the City of Ottawa and to celebrate with all of you today. Je suis très heureuse d'être ici aujourd'hui.
I'm very happy to be here today representing the City of Ottawa and to celebrate with you all.
The city is committed to applying the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act in our day-to-day operations and making our communities more accessible for all. As interim city manager and former chief financial officer, I know firsthand of the tremendous amount of accessibility work that is ongoing across our entire organization. Last June, City Council received an update from the Accessibility Office on the Municipal Accessibility Plan. The plan's progress is reported on an annual basis, and it measures the city's achievements and notes areas where improvement is required. This report is available on ottawa.ca for everyone who's interested. Ce rapport est accessible sur ottawa.ca.
This report is available at ottawa.ca for everyone interested.
We look forward to hearing from the Accessibility Office next spring about all of the accessibility issues the city has accomplished throughout 2022. In highlighting some of the accomplishments, I wanted to start by mentioning some of the accessibility initiatives in our recent municipal elections, which were administered by the Office of the City Clerk. To ensure the election was accessible to all electors, election workers and candidates, and several initiatives were offered. These included the addition of advanced voting days, implementing a special mail-in ballot voting option, offering accessible vote tabulators at select voting places, and ensuring voting places were accessible for everybody. Each voting place also offered accessibility tools, including large print and braille templates, magnifying sheets, and curbside voting. These are really just some of the accessibility initiatives that ensured an accessible election process. A full elections accessibility report will be delivered to Council in the upcoming months. I'm also pleased that we've seen some accessibility achievements in transit. Je suis fière aussi de réalisation en matière des accessibilités dans le transport en commun. In the spring, the city introduced My Paratranspo, the first phase of the online booking of Paratranspo. The current service allows for Paratranspo customers to serve online or self-serve online to book trips for the next day, to cancel a book trip, or track the location of their vehicle while it's on its way to pick them up, and also manage their customer profile. The next phases of My Paratranspo in the coming year will bring more self-service features for customers, continuing to reduce the need for Paratranspo customers to wait on the telephone queue. Housing is an extremely important focus for the upcoming term of council. The current 10-year housing and homelessness plan provides the foundational actions the city will take to improve housing and support services for people who need it within our community. In addition, the Affordable Housing Capital Plan 2021 was presented to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for an opportunity to provide their disability review and comment. In terms of seasonal based initiatives, we recognize that considerable accessible barriers that winter brings. And I'd like to take this opportunity to share several city initiatives that support snow removal and winter maintenance for our residents. In 2021, the Public Works Department consulted the public, including people with disabilities, as part of our winter maintenance quality standards review. The department worked with the Accessibility Office, staff, and members of the public to produce an awareness campaign for staff and the video highlights the impact of winter maintenance to improve mobility, safety, independence of persons with disabilities in our city. Driveway and walkway snow removal support is provided to eligible residents of our city. The Snow Go program provides a matching service to those who need to locate a contractor or a community member for snow removal. The Snow Go Assist program provides for older adults and people with disabilities on low income with financial assistance for snow removal services. Funds are allocated to 9 local community agencies who coordinate the Snow Go and the Snow Go Assist programs across the city. In the 2021 and 2022 seasons, the Snow Go programs fielded more than 1,400 contracts for older adults and people with disabilities and made 531 referrals to snow remover contracts. 522 residents received a subsidy towards their snow removal costs. To support accessible communication, since 2020, the Innovative Client Services Department, through our 311 call center, introduced a Canada Video Relay Service, I'll call it VRS, for Ottawa residents. VRS enables people with hearing or speech disabilities who use sign language to communicate with voice telephone users. The sign language user connects to a VRS operator using an internet-based video conferencing. The operator then places a voice telephone call to the other party and relays the conversation from sign language to voice and vice versa. The service is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. VRS allows callers to express themselves in their first language, ASL or LSQ, when asking questions or making requests to the city. This initiative is a direct result of feedback provided from the deaf community. As Mayor Sutcliffe mentioned earlier, all the accessibility initiatives created were based on feedback and consultation from our Accessibility Advisory Committee, our disability community associations, such as the Ottawa Disability Coalition, and by our residents. At the end of this event, Lucille will explain how you can reach out to the city with your own questions and feedback on our work. And I encourage all of you to do so and stay connected to ensure our city works towards removing barriers and being accessible to everybody. Thank you, and my best wishes for a happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Je vous remercie et vous souhaite à tous et à
Thank you all, and my best wishes for a happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you very much for that, Wendy. And special thanks also to the city clerk, Rick O'Connor, the manager of legislative services, Tyler Cox, and the city's senior leadership team who support and drive all these important initiatives. Now, we will move on to our first speaker. It is Philip Riskala. And the other speaker that will be joining us as well in this portion will be Rich Donovan. And we will do a question period after both presentations. So first, I'd like to introduce Philip Riskala, Chief Executive Officer for Accessibility Standards Canada. Mr. Riskala is well known for his ability to manage programs effectively and efficiently with collaborative multidisciplinary teams. He has built and led teams to execute strategic project proposals with a variety of focuses, including accessibility, climate change, energy efficiency, and more. Please welcome Philip Riskala.
Thank you very much. I'm assuming everybody can hear me or see me on the screen. So as was said, I'm Philip Riskala. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Accessibility Standards Canada. I'm also the Deputy Head for the organization. Accessibility, and before I start, maybe I'll just a little description of myself. I use the pronouns he and him. I also describe myself as a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, wearing dark glasses and a blue suit and a blue shirt. So Accessibility Standards Canada itself is a departmental corporation within the federal government. We were established back in 2019 as a result of the Accessible Canada Act. And what makes us unique is we are one of several players, but there's three key players in the act that are identified. But we're one of the three players in the act with a mandate to do three things. One of them is to develop standards in the area of accessibility that removes barriers to accessibility. The other one is we fund research, and that research is then used to help support the standards and help policymakers in removing barriers to accessibility. And we also disseminate this information across the country. So if we can go to the second slide, please. So for the people in the audience with low vision, this slide contains a painting of the Parliament building. Now, I'd like to begin by asking everyone a question. And I usually do this before I give a little talk here. So has anyone here ever been disadvantaged by a curb cut? So what I mean by a curb cut is that intersection usually appears between a sidewalk and a street. And since this is a one-way dialogue, I'm assuming the answer is going to be no. Nobody's ever been inconvenienced by a curb cut. Now imagine if we didn't have that curb cut and nobody really knew what a curb cut was. Would this be a disadvantage to anyone in the group? And again, since I don't really see everybody on the screen, I'm going to assume that there's going to be at least one or several people that are going to be saying yes to this question. In my case, I can think of a few people in my office alone that use wheelchairs that wouldn't actually be able to come to the office if there weren't curb cuts. They wouldn't be able to go to a restaurant. They wouldn't be able to go to a doctor's appointment. They wouldn't be able to participate in society. And we're talking here about a 6-inch lip between a street and, between a sidewalk and a lip. But for people that are facing these types of barriers, this may as well be a 12-foot wall. So in the land of disability, this is what we actually refer to as a barrier. And in the case, it restricts people's movements. Now, let me put forward another question. Have any of you ever benefited from a curb cut? And I would assume the answer is going to be yes, because not only does a curb cut help those that are in wheelchairs, but it also helps those that are using trolleys, using bikes, movers, strollers, whatever. They all benefit from this curb cut. So if you look at it from this very, very simple example, we've introduced curb cuts to help people with wheelchairs, but the benefit is that everybody in society benefits from this curb cut. I'm going to give you one other example before I get into my presentation. Everybody does this. And I guarantee you everybody does this, and everybody's benefited from this. And I know definitely my kids have. Anybody with a cell phone right now that doesn't text? Texting was started so that it could actually benefit those people that weren't able to actually communicate on a phone verbally. And as we know today, and at least in my example, I can't get my son or daughter to pick up a phone. You have to actually text them in order for them to reply. But this is another example of where some technology came in to aid those with disabilities, and it actually became mainstream and it became beneficial to all. Although I would question whether or not texting is beneficial to all. So let me move on to the next slide. Slide 3, please, on accreditation. This slide here shows the logo of Standards Council of Canada. This is a standards accreditation organization within Canada, and they're responsible for providing accreditation to all standards development organizations. So why did I put this on the screen? Well, Accessibility Standards Canada, although we're 3 years old, we are now a nationally accredited standards development organization. So you're probably saying to yourself, big deal, what does that mean to me? How does that really benefit me? Well, it means a few things. On one side, it means that we are the only accessible standards development organization in Canada and in the world that's accredited. I would say we're very unique in that sense. So our main focus and our only focus is to develop standards to remove barriers to accessibility. Nobody else has this mandate. Secondly, it means that when our standards are developed through an accredited process, it follows an extremely rigorous process. I've been in the standards world and codes world for 33 years. I understand the benefits of having standards developed in a really rigorous process with lots of involvement, lots of consultation, balanced approach, consensus, and all this is met through this accredited process. It means that when our standards are developed, not only will the federal government adopt, but it makes it much easier for provincial governments to adopt, much easier for municipal governments to adopt, and for private sector organizations to actually accept and adopt these standards. So for us, it also means that our standards will have a lot of credibility. So being accredited is huge, because once our standards are out there, they really mean something. They're not just going to be a standard that somebody can look at and say, well, we don't really buy into this. I'll go one step further and say that not only are we following an accredited process, we have taken it 2 or 3 notches above that. We make sure that when we're developing our standards, we include the community of persons with disabilities in the development of our standards. Our standards, they're usually a balanced organization of technical committees, but anywhere between 35 and 55% of our members are persons with disabilities or lived experience. So that's very unique to us. So when we're developing standards, we have the input of the community that's most impacted by those standards. We can go to slide 4, please. Collaboration and coordination. So here you're going to see an image of a maple leaf with a number of individuals with various disabilities pictured within the maple leaf. From our perspective, collaboration is key to success of our organization. While we have a mandate right now to develop standards and take these standards, and as a CEO for the department, I can take these standards and hand them off to my minister and say, I recommend that this goes into the legislation. That's a very quick process. That doesn't exist in any other standards world. We have a lot of power, and the Act gave us that power to create these standards, make the recommendation, and recommend that they go into legislation at the federal level. But if our goal, and the Canadian goal, is that we become barrier-free, Canada becomes barrier-free by 2040, this is not going to be enough. We have to work with provincial governments. We have to work with municipal governments. We have to work with the private sector, because we have to make sure that not only are we creating standards and creating the federal government and all the agencies that fall under the federal government, like Air Canada, CN Rail, the banks, national banks, etc., having to meet these higher level or this new level of accessibility, but we also have to make sure that other levels of government are following suit. And to that point, we are making a lot of progress working with our partners throughout the country, within the territories and provinces at provincial and territorial levels, in collaborating on the development of our standards. We have agreement with many jurisdictions right now that they'll be looking at our standards when they're developed. In some cases, some of them will be adopting our standards before we even adopt our standards. We're collaborating and sharing information, sharing best practices. In some provinces, they're actually ahead in some areas. We'll be looking at that material so that we're not duplicating efforts. So the biggest benefit from this is that we end up creating standards with buy-in, and we actually get the biggest impact across the country. If we can go to slide number 5, please. So this here is just a map of Canada with the flags depicted on each province and territory. So as we work with federal governments and provinces, well, let me just step back a little bit. Our intent for aligning our standards, first of all, is that we'll use an example to kind of explain this. If somebody were to walk into a Starbucks downtown Toronto, I would suspect that that individual doesn't care that the landlord of that building is federal government, provincial government, municipal government, or private sector. What they care about is that they're able to get into the building safely, order their beverage, go to the washroom if they need to, sit at a table, and exit the building safely. They never ask who the landlord is of that building. So our intention here, by sharing our standards and by harmonizing and working with provincial and territorial governments, is that there's one consistent set of standards across the country, so that people aren't coming in and wondering, why is it that I go to this Starbucks across the street and I can go in their washroom, but I go to this Starbucks and I can't even get into the front door? We want to make sure that these standards are consistent across the board. And this is why harmonization is key for us. And this is a very simple example. I can give you 6,000 other examples, but not in 10 minutes, unfortunately. So let's go to slide number 6, please. When I talk about, on this slide here, you're going to see a woman in a wheelchair going down an accessible ramp and another individual walking behind her. So when we talk about standards development itself, What does that mean? We develop standards in a multitude of areas. There's 7 priority areas that have been identified under the Act, and we are developing standards in all those areas. Currently, we have 13 standards under development. So we're 3 years old. We already have 13 standards under development. We're actually making remarkable progress. The standard that we have, and I'm just going to highlight a few of them. One of them is the model standard for the built environment. That's out for public review as we speak. It's a 60-day public review on that. And just to put it in context, that's a 115-page standard that we've just created on built environment. That's buildings, and this is version 1. There'll be additions and modifications and improvements to the standard as we go forward. We have standards on outdoor spaces that are under development, emergency egress, emergency measures, wayfinding, plain language, employment, procurement. These are all standards that are currently under development right now. And what makes our standards unique and different than a lot of other standards and a lot of other codes that exist is everybody who's actually worked in the world of codes, standards, regulations has heard the expression minimum acceptable. In our case, we are still developing to minimum acceptable. The only difference with us is we're adding a level of equity to it. So when we say you develop a building to a certain standard so that everybody goes to a 15th story of a building, for example, and can exit that building, we want to make sure that everybody can exit that building, not just able-bodied persons can walk down the stairs, but everybody's afforded the same level of safety, access, egress out of that building. So as an example, the example that I just gave right now is that we're still going to minimum level, but the inclusion is not just that 75% of able-bodied people that are going to benefit from that minimum level. We want to stretch that out to almost 100% of people will benefit from that minimum level. So that means, yes, there'll be changes to design, there'll be changes to approach, there'll be different measures that have to be put into the building, but the intent here is that there's equity provided to everyone in our standards. So that's really the differentiator between our standard and standards that you may see that currently exist or codes that currently exist. If we can go to slide number 7, please. Our organization, on this, sorry, I have to also indicate what the picture is. It's a picture of an individual with a white cane walking across the street with tactile markings on the ground. So our organization also funds a number of research projects. So we have a grants and contribution program. We funded about 50 projects to date. We have about $8.5 million a year. These projects are awarded to organizations across the country, to everyone but provincial governments. So we can't award to provincial governments, but we can award to organizations. And our primary goal is to do research that we then share with everyone that will help minimize or reduce barriers to accessibility. Slide number 8, please. I'm almost finished. As I indicated, we launched our public review for our first standard on the built environment. That's out right now, and I encourage everybody to take a look at that and provide their comment. And I have provided the website and the information on the screen. We'll go to the last slide because I know I'm running out of time. And how I would encourage everyone to get involved. There's a number of ways you can get involved with our organization. So technical committees, we always are looking for members on our technical committees. What makes us unique on our technical committees is that if you come from a community of persons with disabilities, we pay you to sit on our committees. So this is not asking for volunteering your time for this. You're going to be paid for your time. You can also apply for grants and contributions to our organization. You can comment on a public review on the standards that are out for review. I'm going to make a pitch like every other organization. You can also apply to work for our organization. Like everybody else, we're always looking for great employees within our organization. And we'll go to the last slide. And I think I'm right on time here. And I want to thank everybody for giving me some time to speak to you. And I think I'll be back on later on today to answer some questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Riscala, for that update on the work of the Accessibility Standards, Accessible Standards Canada. Our office looks forward to continued collaboration with our federal counterparts towards a Canada without barriers. Now, I would like to invite Rich Donovan to speak. Mr. Donovan is an entrepreneur and is recognized around the world as a subject matter expert on the connection of disability and corporate profitability. He has spent more than 17 years focused on defining and unlocking the economic value of the disability market. In February of 2022, the Government of Ontario appointed Rich to lead the 4th review of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Please welcome Rich Donovan.
Thank you, Cecile. It's a pleasure to be back with my friends in Ottawa today. It's always good to see you all. So today I'm going to take you to a quick overview of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and give you a preview of what we're going to say in January when we come up with our assessment report. So by law, the AODA is required to be reviewed every 3 years. The content of the review are fairly broad. So we are taking a very different approach to this review. Rather than treating it as an audit, we are treating it as an opportunity to solve a bunch of problems. So we're having conversations across the country with people in the field to really understand what their issues are, to understand what they're grappling with, and to understand where their roadblocks and opportunities are to delight people with disabilities in a regulatory context. I say in a regulatory context because the intent of the AODA was to overcome discrimination against people with disabilities that has been going on for 50 years at least. I can make a very easy case for thousands of years, but we won't go into a history lesson today. So we are taking a view of, look, it's pretty obvious that the province isn't going to be accessible in 2 years. Nobody disputes that. We haven't had anybody say that's not the case. So rather than spend our time worrying about that, we're spending our time focused on how do we get there? How do we get there fast? How do we create urgency? What are the tools and levers that provincial governments, municipal governments, and frankly, federal governments can pull to drive disability forward? Recognizing that government won't solve this problem by themselves. So we're taking a very collaborative approach, investing people in this process as we go. And I have to say, I'm rather impressed with the candor and will of people to move forward. So the process for each island is pretty straightforward. We've just completed our first round of consultations. We had something like 50 interviews with individuals. We had 2 town halls. What we heard was not surprising. The experience of people with disabilities in Ontario, in Canada, globally, is not good. Again, this is not a surprise. What is a surprise to me is we've been doing this for 17 years and we're no further down the road in those experiences. We've got laws, we've got standards, we've got regulations, but the experience by and large of people with disabilities is pretty similar to what it was in 2005. That to me is unacceptable, and it should be unacceptable to you as well. So we have a lot of work to do. We have to change what we're doing, because if we continue on the path that we've been on, we will not achieve the goal of equal experience for people with disabilities. So as we go forward here in the next 6 months, we will be doing a second round of consultations. We will be talking to many people in government, many people in business, many people in municipalities to understand how to evolve our assessments into recommendations for the provincial government. Those recommendations will come out in June. June 1st is our deadline, and I always meet deadlines. You will see a report by June 1st. And that report will contain a number of recommendations to evolve what was a pretty good idea in 2005 that now faces a very different environment. One of the key themes that I'm starting to grapple with here is we spend a lot of time focused on regulation, and we spend almost no time focused on process. Organizations, whether they be private sector, public sector, they run on process. Process is what drives everyday life within an organization. And we spend very little time incentivizing good process. And with incentives, you can either use the carrot or the stick or both to incentivize good process that will actually drive consistent outcomes. So that's going to be one of our key themes going into the next 6 months, is figuring out how we entice organizations to build good process that will lead to consistent outcomes. We're not there yet. We have quite a bit of work to do, but the next 6 months will be the start of that process. Finally, I'm going to end on the most important note, and this is a note about leadership. And I'm going to say this bluntly because there's no other way to put this. The disability sector, the disability issue, is absent leadership at the cabinet table, whether they be municipally, provincially, or federally. The scope and scale of this issue is far bigger than other issues that get much more prioritization. There are many reasons for this, but the number one issue that we have to face coming out of this review is to find a way to prioritize disability and inject urgency into the conversation. This is something that we're going to grapple with pretty intensely over the next 6 months, and hopefully come to a series of acceptable recommendations that will move this issue of the priority scale at various leadership tables. Thank you, Lucille, for having me. And again, best of luck to the Ottawa team in the months and years ahead.
Thank you, Rich, for joining us today. I really appreciate your words. You're right, the work is never done. The Corporate Accessibility Office will be submitting our feedback, and we look forward to hearing about the upcoming changes to the AODA legislation. So thank you for your words today, and thank you for your openness.
We look forward to your submissions, Lucille.
We'd now like to take some questions for Rich or for Philip. And so I would encourage people to write in their messages and their questions in the chat, and we will get you some answers. We have our first one, and if you could say who they're directed to. So this first one is not directed to either or, so we'll just see who wants to answer it. It says, what about people with non-visible disabilities such as autism who can walk, but are not fast enough, and so they creates minor issues with things like trying to cross the street. The amount given to cross the street, the timing is not always appropriate for someone like that, especially in the winter as they try to climb over snowbanks. So I'm not sure who would like to take that. I think both of you are dealing with some built environment standards. So who would like to start?
I could throw it over to Rich first.
Okay.
So what we come to realize is built environment is its own animal in disability. And what's happened over the last 2 decades is physical issues around disability have taken the priority in regulation. This is the opposite of the statistical distribution of disability. Most disabilities do not have a physical component to them. They're non-visible. They tend to deal with cognitive issues. Somewhere between 60 and 75% of disability fall into this category. It's obvious to us that the AODA undervalues those folks just because it was written in a different time, in a different space. So we're going to spend a significant amount of time focusing on non-physical disabilities to elevate them in the conversation. Separately, on the other side of that coin, built environment gets a lot of the attention for one reason. It's capital intensive. It's not the overwhelming conversation we hear about, but because it costs so much money to fix things that are built that were not accessible, it gets more to the attention because it focuses on cash. So we are going to recommend the built environment be treated separately than most disability issues in Ontario, because it needs to be tied to a financing regime that we do not currently have. So we're going to step back at that and figure out not what to do, because that's pretty straightforward, more how to pay for it.
Thank you, Rich. Philip?
Yeah, I'll just add that when our committees are looking at standards development, we consider every aspect of disability. So there's not just physical, is invisible disabilities, cognitive disabilities, all of them are considered in the development of our standards. And we have funded many projects that deal with more of the invisible type disabilities that exist now. So I think you're going to be seeing changes coming, and as the research comes in and as the information starts coming in, you're going to see improvements to our standards that address a much broader perspective of disabilities.
Thank you, Philip. Our next question says it's for Rich. It says, can you speak to enforcement of current requirements, as well as if this is contemplated as part of your current conversation? So enforcement.
I feel like the second part of your question first. Yes, it is part of our job to look at enforcement. My assessment on enforcement is pretty simple. Coming from a Wall Street job where enforcement was incredibly difficult, I feel very comfortable saying that disability laws anywhere in the world are not enforced. Whether they be Ontario, Canada, US, Europe, Japan, these things don't get enforced like other laws. And this goes back to leadership, right? This is a choice of society to say disability is not important. And that's reality, folks. This is not a priority issue for government anywhere. So we as a society have to grapple with this idea of, do we want an accessible world? And if we do, our choices have to change. One of those choices is, how do we switch to an enforcement mechanism that is taken seriously and that is effective in the job that it does? These are all questions that we have to ask. These are all questions that we are grappling with as reviewers. And I can assure you, we will be making some pretty clear recommendations on the level and type of enforcement under the AODA.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Philip, we're running out of time, but would you like to address that as well from a federal perspective?
Yeah, so from a federal perspective, when I gave my talk, I indicated there's 3 entities under the act, and one of them is a commissioner, and the commissioner's role is the enforcement. They will make sure that, you know, all the standards that are put into legislation, people are adhering to them. And the arm of the enforcement is quite, they have a monetary penalties if you don't, you know, if you violate these rules. So they're taking it very seriously. That the commissioner was assigned 3 or 4 months ago. So this is his primary role, is to oversee conformance.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You've got some applause coming in for both of you. Well, I want to thank you both for your time today. We always love having you at our events because we get to know what's forthcoming and we're able to tell the community, the global community now with Zoom, what's coming up both federally and provincially here. And it certainly helps us as well to be able to do our work here at the City of Ottawa. So I want to thank you both for your time today. And on behalf of the city and on behalf of participants, we just want to say how wonderful it is to know that we have capable people working on these types of standards, and that we are, although there's always more work to be done, we are moving forward. So thank you both, Rich and Philip.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So now, as the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities 2022 theme is Transformative Solutions for Inclusive Development, the role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world, I would like to invite some of our community partners to speak about the innovative ways in which we collaborate with the community of people with disabilities to develop accessible solutions for our programs, projects, and services. I would like to welcome Philip Turcotte, Chair of the City's Accessibility Advisory Committee, to the microphone. Philip will highlight some of the committee's work over the past 4 years and speak about the upcoming AAC membership recruitment. J'inviterai maintenant Philippe Turcotte de notre comité consultatif sur
I would like to invite now Philippe Turcotte, Chair of the City Accessibility Advisory Committee, to talk about some of the works.
Your Worship, members of City Council, special shout out to my City Councilor, Ariel Troster, City staff and fellow Ottawans, and especially fellow Ottawans with disabilities. Happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. We're a couple of days early, but that's what happens when an International Day falls on the weekend. But I wanted to be among the first to wish you an happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities nonetheless. It's absolutely an honor for me to be with you all today virtually. As you've heard, my name is Phil Turcotte. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I have the privilege of serving right now as the chair of the city's Accessibility Advisory Committee. I'll just take a second to describe myself, both the visible and the non-visible. So I'm a queer, disabled, neurodivergent white man in my 30s. My hair is tied in a ponytail, I'm wearing glasses, and a dress shirt with a tulip pattern. I use mobility devices, including leg braces and occasionally a wheelchair. I wanted to pause here to acknowledge that I'm joining this virtual event today from my home in Somerset Ward, and I recognize that I live, work, and play on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. I'm grateful for their stewardship of this land and for the opportunity to be a guest and a neighbor here in Ottawa. In the time that I have with you today, I want to talk to you about three things. First, the role of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, some of the work it has accomplished, and closing with some thoughts on this year's theme for the International Day. So let me turn to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. You've heard a little bit already about who we are and our membership, and I thank Mayor Sutcliffe for highlighting that. As some of you might know, our committee has a very interesting mandate. We offer advice to City Council and to City staff on matters related to accessibility for persons with disabilities and for seniors in Ottawa, because it's important to remember that accessibility is a question for seniors as well in the experience of disability and aging. Of all the city's advisory committees, ours is the only one that's created by legislation. We are created by the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, which you've already heard about this morning. And this act requires the city to create our committee and to consult with the committee when they're making decisions that impact the accessibility of our city. And in particular, how they meet the requirements of the provincial legislation on accessibility. And in addition to this, in addition to our advisory role on the provincial law, City Council has also asked us to work on issues of accessibility more broadly, as I've mentioned, including matters that relate to seniors and the experience of disability and aging. We very much welcome this expansive role. City Council could have given us a much narrower mandate if they wanted to, and they haven't done that. And I think that's a great credit to City Council that they've given us a really broad mandate. As you've also heard, the advisory committee meets at least 6 times a year at meetings that are open to the public, and I very much encourage all of you, if you're interested, to please join us. It's always wonderful to have members of the public listen in as we debate some important issues in our city. We also provide a lot of written advice by email behind the scenes. And I just want to highlight again that we're all volunteers, and I'm very grateful for the hard work that my fellow committee members provide on the committee. So let me talk to you a bit about the work that the Accessibility Advisory Committee has accomplished in our current term, so looking back over the last 4 years. We've consulted on hundreds, if not thousands, of site plan proposals and projects in our city to either build new municipal projects accessibly from the ground up or to retrofit existing municipal infrastructure to make them more inclusive and disability positive. For example, we've remained engaged from the very beginning in the design of the LRT and its stations, and as well as the design of the new main branch of the Ottawa Public Library, which, to be fair, is a very exciting initiative, the new library branch. And from what I've seen, certainly, I think it's on track to become one of the most, if not the most, a disability positive municipal building in Ottawa. It's a fine example of how when you design things with disability perspectives in mind and with people with disabilities at the design table, you can really build something that's truly extraordinary. So I very much look forward to seeing that completed in the near future. We were also active on pandemic-related measures, both during well, I think some people like to say that the pandemic is over, but it is certainly not. The disability community will tell you that. And we've been active throughout the pandemic to make sure that city initiatives align with accessibility and meet the needs of people with disabilities, and to stay informed on developments as they happen. For example, we've provided advice on the much needed patio measures for outdoor dining that were implemented earlier this year to ensure that while we do this and we offer this service to restaurants, we make sure that we do that in a way that meets the needs of both the people who would be going to these patios and pedestrians with disabilities. On the construction and design front, the advisory committee has also been successful in collaborating with the National Capital Commission on retrofitting beachfront amenities, which we're very excited about, and with the Ottawa Hospital on the plans for its new campus. One of the areas in which I've seen a lot of growth over the last 4 years is the disability inclusive design of our public and community parks. City staff have truly built an expertise in designing parks to be inclusive to all, and most importantly, to provide a fun and safe space for children to be themselves and to feel welcome and valued. Fostering a sense of belonging and inclusion is vital to building an inclusive city, and our design of parks is a fine example of how we can accomplish this in municipal spaces. The advisory committee has also been heavily involved in ensuring that our municipal elections, as you've heard also, are conducted in an accessible way, and that electors have the adaptive tools that they need to make their voices heard and to cast their ballots. All that electors should have to think about on election day is who they will vote for. They should not have to worry about whether their polling location will be physically accessible, whether their ballot will be available in a format that's accessible to them, and whether they'll be able to cast their ballot in a way that works for them. Ottawa has demonstrated that it is a leader in accessible voting, and again, it has achieved this by including disability perspectives and experiences from the design stage. And if you'll permit me to get a little political, other levels of government have much to learn from the city in terms of how to run an accessible election. The advisory committee has also been keeping a careful eye on more controversial projects, like the licensing of private transportation companies and its impacts on the availability of accessible taxi services, and the trialing of kick e-scooters in our city and their impacts on pedestrian safety. Where needed, we've asked difficult questions of staff and have played a challenge function to ensure that accessibility for seniors and persons with disabilities was respected, prioritized, and enforced. As I'm sure city staff will tell you, the advisory committee is not a rubber stamp. We really are a community of dedicated people with disabilities there to ask tough questions, to sometimes push back. And we've managed to work very well with the city over these last 4 years. We've also pushed for greater transparency on accessibility-related decision-making so that Ottawans with disabilities and our neighbors can understand how and why decisions about accessibility are made at the city. One of our challenge functions is to feed into the city's reporting to the province on its compliance with the requirements of provincial legislation. The advisory committee's role in that process is key, and I commend the city for its transparency and openness with which it has approached its reporting. Speaking of transparency, I'm also very happy to say that the Accessibility Advisory Committee's page on the City of Ottawa's website was recently redesigned to make it easier to understand our work and our efforts. On that page, you'll find easy links to our meeting agendas and motions that we have passed, amongst other things. The advisory committee truly is an example of how Ottawa has successfully leveraged the lived experiences, knowledge, and innovation of Ottawa's disability communities for the betterment of us all. It's also a shining example of the dedicated volunteerism of its members. As I've said, advisory committee members have volunteered hundreds of hours to the betterment of Ottawa, and I could not be prouder of the time and energy given by every single member of the committee. So this leads me to my last point about the advisory committee, recruitment. Just as City Council recently went through a change this year, so too will the advisory committee. The advisory committee serves on a 4-year term that is tied to the term of council. And so after each new election of a council, there will also be an appointment of a new advisory committee and membership. This year especially, there are several of us on the advisory committee that are veterans and that have reached our term limits and are no longer eligible to serve on the advisory committee. After close to 10 years of service to my city as a member of the advisory committee, I am sad to bring this chapter to a close, but even more so, I'm excited for what the future holds for the advisory committee and some new members. It's essential that we put new voices and perspectives in our committees, and I'm excited for the recruitment process that will take place. If you're passionate about building a more inclusive and accessible Ottawa, and especially if you have a disability, I strongly encourage you to apply to be part of the advisory committee. As I've said, it's a real opportunity to make a meaningful change in your city. If you'll let me, I would particularly encourage seniors with disabilities and neurodivergent folks to apply. Now more than ever, your voices and experiences are needed. City staff can provide you with more details about the recruitment process, but I can tell you that applications opened today and that you'll have until 4 p.m. on January 23rd to apply. If you want to have more information, you can visit ottawa.ca/committees for all current information. And I believe that we have a video that will be playing for you at this moment.
Why were you interested in joining the committee? I have had an interest in accessibility ever since I was young. Both my great-grandparents were deaf-mute, so this committee was a great next step for me.
The first time around, I was curious. Second time around, I wanted to participate again.
It was somebody who said, hey, by the way, do you know the City of Ottawa has this and they're currently looking for people to join? Do you want to apply?
What have you enjoyed most about being a member?
Being part of the process.
I've enjoyed getting an inside view into how the city plans its projects.
I learned so much from the people here that it's something I value greatly. I've learned so much and grown so much simply as a person.
The city acknowledges that there are accessibility issues that they want to remove, and they listen to what we say. It's another voice.
Incredibly diverse and wonderful voices and important voices.
How has the committee made an impact on Ottawa?
We had so many projects come across our desk, like almost every park you've seen that's been restructured in the last 3 years.
As I got to feed into the launch of Ottawa's new light rail transit system, and I got to see all of the interesting features of the system to ensure it is fully accessible.
We are playing a definite role in the work that the city is doing.
What would you tell residents who may be interested in applying?
Absolutely. Come forward, do it.
The word rewarding is the best way to describe why you would want to participate.
If somebody who really wants to know how accessibility works for the city and its city plans and projects, this is a great way to do it.
I think a key thing I would say is that you don't have to have a disability or be a senior to be on the committee. We all have a role to play in making Ottawa an accessible and inclusive place to live for everyone.
What a wonderful video. And again, if you're interested about accessibility, please do apply. So I'm going to just close my remarks by offering just a few thoughts on the theme for today's International Day. So as you've heard, the theme is Transformative Solutions for Inclusive Development, the Role of Innovation in Fueling an Accessible and Equitable World. You've heard me talk about disability positivity a few times already. And I think on the International Day especially, it's important that we acknowledge that disability is a vital and essential part of human diversity. Living with a disability does not make you less worthy, less valuable, or less capable. To the contrary, your body, your mind, who you are, is valuable and you're perfect just as you are. Never doubt that you are meant to be here and that the diversity that you bring to the world matters. Decision makers and folks in position of influence must recognize that disability culture and communities are natural sources of innovation. Learning to navigate a world that was not built with you in mind and that too often ignores your value and your inclusion means that you have to be innovative in order to survive. We transform that reality by recognizing that persons with disabilities are innovators in and of themselves and have a unique set of skills and perspectives to offer. You have to invite us in, you have to hire us, you have to support us, and you have to actually listen to us. Inclusive development means including people with disabilities, disability culture, and lived experiences at the design and decision-making tables. We often hear the phrase, and you've heard it this morning, nothing about us without us. This applies equally to development. Solutions are not transformative if they don't include disabled perspectives. Things are not inclusive if they're not accessible. They are not equitable if they do not identify, remove, and prevent accessibility barriers. We, people with disabilities, matter, and we deserve to be in every space and at every table. Fellow Ottawans with disabilities, I hope that every day you are proud of who you are and the diversity that you bring to the world. On the International Day especially, I hope that you'll take the time to celebrate yourself. Happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you this morning.
Thank you so much for those words, Philip. You, I'm sure know already, but you will be sadly missed on the committee, and we wish we could keep you forever. But unfortunately, those are not the rules. But I want to thank you for your words this morning and for encouraging people to be on the Accessibility Advisory Committee. It is such an important committee here at the City of Ottawa. And so thank you for encouraging everyone to share their experiences with us. As Philip mentioned, the AAC is a legislated committee that provides invaluable recommendations to help improve our programs, our projects, our facilities, and our services. If this type of work is of interest to you, I encourage you to apply as an AAC member over this new term of council. I'd now like to invite former chair. I understand that Jerry was the chair of the ODC since 2014 and has recently stepped down, of the Ottawa Disability Coalition, who will speak next. The Ottawa Disability Coalition is a cross-disability organization that supports equitable access and independent living for all persons with disabilities. Jerry will speak about some of the work the organization undertakes with the city and the importance of a collaborative relationship. And I know that we are engaged with many organizations out there. We certainly value the Ottawa Disability Coalition's unique perspective. And so, Jerry, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Lucille. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to follow Philip. He's an amazing person, and the whole of the AAC is quite amazing. And that my name is Jerry Fiore. I have been living with MS since 1986. I wear glasses. I have hearing aids. I have a walker, wheelchair, scooter. I'm sitting in an accessible bungalow in Maryville Gardens. I'm a 71-year-old privileged white male with gray hair, mustache, and beard. And I have a very supportive wife and a good pension. Now, not every senior or person with disability is as comfortable, healthy, safe, socially engaged as I am. And that, in fact, I guess most people aren't. And that's why I started volunteering when I restarted. I volunteered before, but I started volunteering when I retired in 2007. And I began actually as a volunteer driver with the Old Forge, taking seniors and persons with disabilities to their medical appointments. And over the 7 years that I was a volunteer there, I had over 700 drives, and that, and talking to amazing people, so I, really appreciated that and meeting people. At the same time, I started volunteering with the MS Society Social Action Committee, and I knew nothing about the social action whatsoever, but I was told I had to volunteer there, so I took it up. And that I quickly learned what social action involved. It's about awareness, advice, and advocacy. Now, awareness is acquiring and providing information and insights. And that advice is providing ideas and solutions to address those issues, and advocacy is providing advice to those people who haven't asked you for it. So basically, it's all part of the same thing. And that I also learned that the MS Society had a long history of working, collaborating with the staff of the City of Ottawa, particularly OC Transpo, Paratranspo there, and Public Works. And that, in fact, several people from the MS Social Action Committee had been part of the process of establishing Paratranspo and helping it involve in that. Peggy Ellen and Avril Gunter, to name those people. We continued having regular meetings with OC Transpo and Paratranspo and having education events, and OC Transpo Para came and presented to people with MS there. We expanded these meetings beyond that with Public Works to coordinate the winter snow clearing, as an example, and help set priorities for their work. But it was not just us bringing information and issues to them. They came and asked us for their advice on various areas in that. And we were highly involved in the selection of the new low floor buses, dealing with unaccommodated rides and the booking system in that. But very quickly, we moved on to expanding that conversation to work with Lucille and the Accessibility Office and collaborate with them. Some of this also involved Paratranspo, because we felt that OC Transpo and Paratranspo needed further insights coming from the accessibility side of things to sort of help them push forward with council to get more support and services and that. But basically, that area is involved in the AODA, the Municipal Accessibility Plan, and all the social supports that are needed there. So we discussed quite a bit of different things there. Now, I have to say that from 2012 to 2014, I was on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I really support whatever Philip has said about getting involved. I encourage people to really get involved with them, because they're truly crucial to, their performance is truly crucial to people with disabilities and that. So please do get involved in that whole area there. I left the AAC simply because at that point in time, after 7 years of chairing the MS Social Action Committee, I became chair of the ODC, the Ottawa Disability Coalition, and I really couldn't do both. It would put me in a sense in a conflict of interest, but I just didn't have the time to really work on that there and that. Now, the ODC started out as 14 different organizations, basically led mostly by the MS Social Action Committee. Karen Scott, who is a person that started with the Social Action Committee at the same time that I started there, started that process, and we brought on all these other organizations and the mission is to build a fully inclusive community in which all persons with disabilities have equitable access to the same opportunities and activities as other citizens of the City of Ottawa and surrounding area. There are now 22 organizations, and that not just the MS Society, Parkinson's, Ottawa Independent Living Resource Center, Huntington's, the CNIB, to name just a few of them. We have lots of priorities in that, but in the order of priority is to try and get community support and health services for everyone, but persons, especially persons with disabilities, affordable, accessible, inclusive, and appropriate housing, all the financial supports for people, employment, so they can have employment, education in that area, disability friendly, barrier free, universal design environment, and reliable public transit. In that, I think everyone can equate to that last one. So we have twice a year meetings. Basically, one of the collaborative ways we do things is have twice a year meetings with the city through the accessibility office. We just had one November 15th, and I'll just read off the agenda, the diverse items that we talk about. Snow clearing with Public Works, the cycle tracks and multi-use pathways with, again, Public Works and real estate planning and development. And that we talked about disaster planning informed by the recent Direcco experience. We met with Emergency and Protective Services and Ottawa Public Health on that. We talked about a new design for the bus rapid transit platform edge treatment and that, and then just about general transit issues in that. So we do cover a lot of areas there. But over the years, we've also done walk audits with Public Works on Sandy Hill and Colonnade Road. We've worked on pedestrian, cyclist, vehicle safety. I'm on the Road Safety Action Plan of Safer Roads Ottawa, but we've also worked with on protective sections standards and that. In 2021, we worked with the Accessibility Office, the Equity Office, to set up a special presentation on COVID-19 vaccination and that. And we were involved with the e-scooter pilot project as well. We've had other work with the NCC, with the new campuses of the Civic Hospital, and I did put a question in the chat to the standards groups about a question I had on that, and I hope to get an answer from that. So I take advantage of every forum to raise some questions in that. We've had parking lot audits with the Ottawa Hospital, the Civic, and Riverside. We deal with the United Way of Eastern Ontario to deal with lots of problems that came out of the convoy occupation downtown and that. And we are, myself and another member are on different working groups dealing with accessibility, affordability, adaptability, and inclusion in 15-minute communities on federal lands, basically the Confederation Heights Project and the Tunney's Pasture Project and that. So we get involved where we can in that. So I mentioned we're about awareness, advice, and advocacy, and we work collaboratively in any ways that we can. A world without discrimination would be a better world for all persons, regardless of their abilities. It is widely known that discrimination in various forms, racism, ableism, ageism, sexism, exists within systems and society in general. So we look forward to working with others to combat all of this in all their forms as well. So the City of Ottawa has certainly been a willing partner for the ODC. However, there's a lot that needs to be done. Other members have said this. There has work to be done on the AODA implementation. We must ensure that there's a range of affordable supply of accessible, adaptive, inclusive, and appropriate housing there. All the communities in the Ottawa area need to have appropriate housing units within safe, clean, and healthy environment, having healthcare and community support centers and hubs around there, and that is another priority. And we also have to emphasize affordable, reliable transit, and that. So I have to really emphasize that accessibility is not just about physical access, it's about removing all attitudinal systemic, and financial barriers which prevent people from accessing places and services, barriers which prevent them from reaching their potential and being safe and healthy in that. So we look forward to collaborating with the city council, with the mayor and the city staff to make the city of Ottawa livable for all. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I look forward to further discussions.
Thank you very much, Jerry, for joining us today and accepting our proclamation on behalf of the Ottawa Disability Coalition. Unfortunately, we won't have time for questions for Philip and Jerry. However, if you want to still put them in the chat, we will get some answers for you. So I just want to thank Philip and Jerry for being here today. We look forward to continuing to work together in this new term of council. This has been a very insightful morning, and it's been wonderful that we have all been able to spend a bit of time together to celebrate the advancements of accessibility in our city, in our province, and in our country. Before we go, I would encourage everyone to get involved with us. Avant de mettre fin à la rencontre, j'encourage tout le monde à
So before we go, I would encourage everyone to get involved with us.
all the ways you can connect with the city on matters of accessibility on the slide and in the chat. Whether you have advice, concerns, or ideas on anything related to accessibility in our city, please reach out to us. The Accessibility Office general email address has been shared, and you can also contact 311. Vos commentaires sont toujours les bienvenus. Que vous
Your
ayez des
comments are always welcome.
questions ou des idées,
Whether you have advice, concerns, or any ideas, please contact us.
our decisions, adapt our policies, and identify and eliminate barriers. We can't do this without you. Vos suggestions aident à orienter nos
Your
décisions.
feedback helps inform our decision and adapt our policies.
For the city's Accessibility Spotlight e-newsletter on ottawa.ca to receive updates on what the city is doing to increase accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities. Together, we can work towards making Ottawa an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable city for all. Ensemble, nous pouvons s'unir.
So together we can work toward making Ottawa an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable city for all. Thank you all. I wish you all a wonderful day and a good holiday season.
Wonderful day and a safe holiday season. And of course, we wish you a very happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Thank you.